Lisa.
There we
I'm
go.
a, I'll try to get through this one fast. I tried to make one a little less than 20 minutes because I know I'm going to talk um, more than I should. So that way, if I give myself a little room to actually meet the 20-minute mark. So,
All right, the clock's on.
all right, are we ready to go ahead and get started? Are we doing this? Everybody
Let's
ready?
do it, babe.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to Wiki Me Up Before You Go. We're going to have a little fun today with some 80s themes and talk about documentation, something that is incredibly boring. So, if you don't like documentation, I don't like documentation. You don't like documentation. Please don't lie and say you do. You like to use it, but you don't like to write it. We all understand. We're going to get through this and have a little bit of fun. So, we're off. Okay, let me get this other screen going here. PowerPoint never does what we want it to do. All right. Yes, resume slideshow. That's what I would like to do. There we go. All right. So we're going to take you through what's going to happen today. So the first part of this is may the force be with you. It's the knowledge of the force. It's something that you can't see. We always understand that happens. We'll go through what that means a little bit. Where's the beef? If you remember the famous 80s commercial from the Wendy's with all the bun, no beef, we'll talk about that. The flux capacitor. This is what makes knowledge management possible. And AI or artificial intelligence going to short circuit your change process, faster change enablement. So the force. This is the knowledge that lives in your team's head. We know it's there, but it's a force that can't be seen. Uh, this is a common problem. We all dealt with it. Sanjay, one of our members, has a famous story about someone who goes on PTO and has all the keys to the kingdom and ends up, server goes down during that time and it's a huge scramble. We've all been there. I mean, he has a fun story, but it's not unique, right? We've all been there. One of the issues with this is we celebrate hero culture, which is something that's been talked about quite a bit. And we end up with situations where, people like to step up and know what they know, but it's not shared with the team. It's not timely. Tickets, issues last for much longer than they need to last. And we're always scrambling and looking for that person. It's always a fire drill when that happens. So this is one issue we'll try to resolve today. The opposite side is where's the beef? And as you can see, there's our fun ladies up top with all the bread and no beef. And the other side is what happens is we have enough of those issues where server crashes, application goes down, and we don't have the information to solve the problem. So then the pendulum swings the other direction, and we document everything under the sun, and we end up with three versions of the final draft, this or that, and you have to go through tons and tons of documents, tons and tons of stuff on SharePoint. Luckily, if your SharePoint search actually works, you might find five documents that all tell you the same thing, which one's the real one. Document management control is a big deal, and you end up with just mounds and mounds of stuff. In addition to that, you have people writing things down that will actually never be read. There's a lot of documentation that sits out there that never gets accessed, never gets read. Effectively, you wasted your time because, again, we're now so focused on value. Documentation is great, but if it never actually gets read, it didn't create any value. So, where do we find our midpoint? How do we do what we do here? Well, we'll get to the next part, the flux capacitor. And as it says, no, I didn't fall off my toilet and bump my head and come up with this great idea. This was something I borrowed from other disciplines. So, something about me and what I do quite a bit is I don't just think about IT and what IT practices are. I go to other departments, other disciplines, and try to learn from them and see what they're doing. And this is a combination of ideas and sourcing from psychology, marketing, and supply chain management. And what we've created is something a little different. And it really works. And I wanted to share it with everybody and see what you guys think of it. So The idea in a supply chain and marketing concept is there's two methods to creating value or goods. It's a push strategy versus pull strategy. And you can read this, but effectively push is when you create something before the demand exists, right? You can think of inventory that you might build, building widgets and then hoping to sell the widgets that you've built. A pull strategy is when the demand is created first and then you create the widget. So you can think of made to order food, right? You go order food to be made, they don't make it until you order it, right? It's a little slower, but it's more efficient, right? You can think of the advantages of push is that, someone wants a widget, it's on the shelf ready to hand to them. However, you end up with wasted widgets. You end up with obsolete widgets and all these other issues. But in a pull system, it's a little slower, but it's perfect for meeting the demand, right? So whatever the demand is, if they wanted, a number two with cheese, they get a number two with cheese. They don't just get the standard number two or whatever the situation may be. So what we've done is we've taken a look at that and understood psychology around creating documentation and what we're doing. So again, this is a supply chain marketing piece of it. The next piece is the psychology, right? What's our jam? What do we like? What do we hate, right? So what do we dread? We dread doing things that we don't understand the value of. And a lot of times in creating documentation, someone has to tell me that it's important. I have to believe that it's important. And while I do believe so, it's just not the same as seeing immediate, tangible impact. And what are we good at, right? Let's be honest with service desks and IT teams and support teams and even ESM across the enterprise. What are we really good at? Good at closing tickets, especially the ones that have immediate tangible impact. Because every time you help someone with a problem or provide a new service or fulfill a service request, there's a little bit of joy. There's a little bit of like, yep, we got the win. I made this person happy. So if we think about that's what we're good at, that's our jam, right? That's the psychology part of it. And then we compare the push pull method and understand the pros and cons of the supply chain management. We put it all together and what we end up with is what I call documentation tickets. So this is what we actually do in our environment today. Now, there are moments, and I'll be honest, we don't just never document anything from the get-go. We document on our sites, our locations, major applications. We do some basic documentation that we know is just going to be table stakes, right? You have to have some stuff. But we don't document everything. We don't go crazy. We don't over document. In fact, there's a lot of times that we don't have the documentation for it. In fact, we're more like the Force and the Jedi, where some of that stuff lives in someone's head. But this is the way we get out of it. When a ticket comes in that requires information for a service desk for a professional to support or provide a solution to, and they need documentation, they don't just go ask an engineer, they don't just reassign the ticket. We create a brand new ticket that we call a documentation ticket. It's assigned to the engineer. They know it's a high priority because there's a ticket waiting for it, and we're good at it, right? They know when they solve that documentation ticket, they're getting that immediate impact because there's a downstream ticket or upstream ticket, however you want to look at it, that's going to ultimately be solved. One of the things we also don't do is we don't let the engineer solve the problem. We make sure that they're utilizing the support and the support pro is using the documentation that the engineer, whoever it was, created. This sort of validates that the documentation is good enough to use, right? So it's fit to purpose. A thing again, think of the number two with cheese. Did they get the cheese that they wanted, right? This creates one, some cross training, some upskilling, so the teams get to work together. This is where you can see my predator image up there. And so there's that piece of it. You keep engineers connected, right, to the front lines. A lot of times we see people go into the engineering space or the development space and so on, and they get so disconnected from, the employees out in the field, the team that they're supporting, and they lose that connection, right? And this sort of keeps them connected. We get up to date documentation. It's really cool because, and by the way, we also look at usage rate. We look at how fast these tickets are being solved and so on. So it really helps us manage our documentation just through looking at metrics on these tickets that we have classified as documentation tickets. We don't get wasted documentation. There's not something that someone wrote that didn't get used because the only reason it got written down or documented was because it was needed. And then obviously we built a lot of great collaboration team chemistry. And it even goes all the way as far as the engineers even feeling like, their input on this documentation matters, right? They're not feeling like, oh, I got to document this stuff that no one's ever going to read. This is one of those that just does this for those type of issues and needs, right? Now, the next piece, which was sort of chapter 4, we'll move on. This is my little number 5 guy. I don't know if you guys seen the movie Short Circuit, but it was one of my favorite movies as a kid. Number 5 was alive, and the big thing nowadays is AI. So what we have done is we've taken AI and our CMDB and all this documentation, and we've sort of figured out a new way to utilize AI in what we're doing. So in the need for speed, as you can see up there from our Top Gun guys, we needed to improve our change management and change approval process. And specifically for the approval piece of it, what we do is we take all of that documentation, we put it in a repository, and we trained an AI model to read it all and understand it. So every documentation ticket also gets submitted into this repository. Then, anytime we have a change, and you want to make a change, one of our engineers, product managers, whoever, they have all these changes they want to make, they have to ask our AI bot, our number 5, if you want to call it that, um, about this change. And they have to put in what they're changing. And we let the AI scrub all of our documentation and scrape it and come up with all of the upstream and downstream systems that are going to be affected by our change. Whatever services that live out there, what might be affected by this change, right? Then, before we can move forward with the change, and by the way, when it pulls back the documents, it gives us the source, who wrote the document to begin with, right? So then, if it's, let's say it's pulled up 5 documents that says, these things may be affected by this, we have to get approval from the authors of those 5 documents, right? And it's really fast. And we bring the change to them. We say, hey, this is the change we want to make. You wrote this document. Our AI told us that if we make this change, it could affect the service. It's just cool, right? Look at what we're about to go do. Are you cool with this? Is there anything that's going to blindside us? And we've gotten really, really, really good approval rates. In fact, since we've been doing this, we've had 0 rollbacks. We've never had the rollback since we've been doing this, right? I wish I could say that before. I've had way too many, far too many rollbacks in my past. But this is one of those that's really right now batting 100. I probably just ruined my streak. Now I'm scared to go to work, but as of right now, we've got 0. We really have a good understanding of what's going on. Identifies the documents require updating as well. So one of the other things that happens is I see changes go into effect and no one turns around and updates the documents that led to those systems. So now we know, hey, now we got to go back and update those docs, right? Because we're about to make a change. And then we even let AI author some of it for us. Now you have to be a little careful here. We know AI can hallucinate. We know it can do some crazy stuff. We also have to be careful with security. We use Claude to do some stuff around reading our configurations, right? Because you can actually turn it loose and give it configuration data. You have to be a little careful about who you give access to because you don't want some security configuration just being blasted out there by anybody to ask. So just keep in mind you have to be careful with all of that. All right. I'm trying to move this to 819. And so I know that we don't create a ticket for everything. We don't document everything perfectly, the way traditional teams do. And I've given this to a lot of people. Some people have really liked it. Others push back, and that's fair. That's okay. Everybody has their own environment. Everybody has their own thing. But I just wanted to share with you guys what we're doing. And I know that a lot of stuff that I do is a little controversial. So I threw this out here. You guys may not be ready for it yet, but your kids are going to love it. So